All right, hey, hello OpenStack, Tokyo. My name's Gabriel Chapman. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about hyperconvergence in an OpenStack environment. We'll talk about kind of what I call third wave convergence. We'll kind of do a quick, brief introductory. You've all seen some of this stuff before. Ignore this part. It's just a picture of me that was photoshopped. It's the best picture I own, so I wanted to use it. You can follow me on the Twitters. Bacon is king. I have a blog, GabrielChapman.com. Like 4 people read it. Toffler's wave theory is something I read about a long time ago when I was in school. And it kind of talks about the waves of evolution in society, right? We talk about kind of first wave nomadic era, we move into agricultural, we move into the information era. And we're starting to see something similar in terms of converged infrastructure spaces, not just in the OpenStack environment, which is kind of a special space, but in general IT infrastructure as a whole. So today we kind of see first wave, second wave, third wave. We started out with vBlock and those types of technologies. We took a bunch of best in breed components and smashed them all together. Then we took second wave, which was all the OEMs decided, hey, that's a great idea. We're missing out on this. So IBM and HP and a bunch of others got together, and Dell, and they built all of the same things that they did. They took their own switches, they took their own storage, their own compute portions. They might have put some orchestration in there. Mostly they didn't. They tried to sell you 10 different tools and make them all work together. It never did well. Still couldn't quite get that same vBlock or FlexPod type integration points, and I think that's why you saw them kind of stumble in the space. Obviously, the third wave is hyperconvergence, and there's been a lot of buzz about that. A little background, I was one of the first 5 SEs at SimpliVity and started there early in 2013. And this converged ecosystem is, like I said, it's kind of taking these 3 different spaces where it went from this multi-vendor, single vendor, and now hyperconverged. There are roughly 32 different hyperconverged either software or hardware companies out there today. I didn't put them all on the slide. I put most of the ones that are kind of predominant in the space, but they come from anywhere from a pure software play to ones that have integrated hardware to a very specialized appliance-based model. It's very tough to take a software product and validate it across 32 different disparate hardware platforms. So you'll see most of these companies started out as an appliance. Now you're starting to see some of them pivot into the actual software space. So Newt Annex is doing that. You see new companies like SpringPath, there's Maxta, there's GridStore, the list is long, right? But what you're not seeing really is a significant floor sweep, right? We see these products tend to go into kind of niche areas, niche spaces, because people like pictures. We see these definitely the products on the right-hand side here, the Evo Rails, the SimpliVities, the Newt Annex, those types of technologies. They tend to be a point solution. VDI was the low-hanging fruit, right? What's better than everything in one box and all-in-one printer for your VDI workloads? Every time I need another 100 desktops, I just provision another box, stack them like Legos, and scale out. The challenge around that tends to be when I start to run mixed workloads. A lot of these solutions are leveraging some kind of virtual controller. There's a lot of east-west traffic. You get a lot of complexity in there. If your workloads get significantly complex on their own or sophisticated, if you need bare metal support at all, those options tend to not be available on hyperconverged systems. You're starting to see some of them trying to make forays into the Docker or the containerization space, but I think they kind of have their work cut out for them. Because if I'm looking at a container-based solution, I'm going to run that on bare metal. And in fact, every customer I've ever talked to is looking to do it on bare metal unless they're trying to play with it in the lab and just want to spin it up on their desktop. 4 years ago, the space didn't even exist. If you look about it, 2011 is kind of the first hyperconverged product ship with Newt Annex, and we've seen this significant uprate. And you look at these companies, they start out kind of small, 20, 30 people, they have a specific message, and then they start to get traction and they start to roll forward. And you look at it now, Newt Annex is going to probably IPO sometime either this year or early next year. SimpliVity, both those 2 companies alone have both raised over $350 million each in VC funding, and they're starting to get more and more traction in the enterprise space. They don't really so much get large traction in what we call cloud scale, hyperscale, or service provider market. Same thing in telecos. Though you may see logos on their company sites that talk about the area where they may have something sitting in test dev. Test dev or remote office works really great, but like I said, we're not going to go out there and sweep all the big iron off the floor with these technologies. So the space, like I said, continuing to scale, is continuing to better. If we go back in time a little bit, we look at something like Nebula, which was kind of a little ahead of its time. If we really think about it, a OpenStack controller-based solution that would scale and provision for you. Amazing in concept, but way ahead of the curve. Now, if they were coming out with that something like last year, maybe, I think they'd have a lot better adoption because I think OpenStack was way too nascent when they first came to market. And now what you're seeing is basically everybody that worked at Nebula is now over at Oracle. And what did Oracle announce this week at Oracle Open World? They're getting into the cloud space, and that's what those people are working on. So like I said, features in third wave convergence, and you'll see almost every single hyperconverged infrastructure platform today focuses on the data serviceability aspects of it. So they're either offering efficiencies around deduplication, compression, and provisioning, those types of technologies. They're almost all leveraging NFS and a little bit sometimes iSCSI as part of portability or transport. They're trying to simplify all those pieces of the stack. We have, compute, storage, networking, backup appliances. If you look at this, you'll see their marketing infrastructure or their marketing documents that talk about all the different technologies they can completely displace. The reality is, if you've already paid for those products, you're not going to just throw them away because something is going to displace them. You're going to slowly integrate those in. Scalability, the ability to describe, or the ability to scale, and scale is kind of an interesting thing. In the 3, 5, 10, 12, sub 20 host or sub 20 consumable unit, scale is pretty okay. I mean, most people can do it. Almost anybody can do it, right? But when you get to 40, when you get to 60, when you get to 100, when you start to track metadata at scale, that's where things start to really break down. And that's a real test of a scalable solution. Ask what they can do with 50 or 60 nodes. How well does that work? How do they track a global metadata space that spans, 50 terabytes, 100 terabytes, 500 terabytes of data? That's where it gets a little more complex. But that's why they tend to focus their message around this. And they make it very simple because if I'm at a hyperconverged system solution, I'm selling you simplicity. But it gets a little more complex in your data center. So I like to use the analogy of the all-in-one printer. I have a Brother all-in-one printer at home, right? It scans, it faxes, it copies, it does all this great stuff. But if I take that printer and I take it into my office where there's 400 people and I try to get them to use the same printer, it's going to burn up in a day. And that's what we start to see with some of the hyperconverged solutions. At scale, they just kind of melt down a bit. So customer space, right? When it comes to hyperconvergence, or when I talk to what the people are looking at, when I look at the eBays, the Facebooks, those kinds of companies, the Twitters of the world, they already started hyperconverging years ago, but they've done it at a little more module level. Right? If you look at the Facebook solution, they have roughly 5 different types of compute or storage type nodes. They make them interchangeable. They make them modular in the fact that they can address and self-service them, and they're really not a candidate for any kind of hyperconverged infrastructure. Service provider and telcos, like I said, those groups as well, they kind of focused on software-based solutions and commodity off-the-shelf hardware, right? If I can go down and buy it at Fry's, because I'm so big that I can basically buy, ink by the barrel, right? And they can go out and basically set the price for the components that they want to integrate. And if they work with somebody like a really large-scale provider like a WWT or NTT or somebody like that to integrate those solutions for them, or they go to the service integrators like WePro or Cognizant or some of the others and work in tandem with them, or they go directly to the actual supply chain themselves and buy at that level. And then we kind of get into a couple, OpenStack aspects. Managed OpenStack solutions, if you look at what Piston was doing, if you look at what MetaCloud, Metapod is doing, Platform 9 and others, Blue Box, all of them, what they're trying to do now, you see they all got gobbled up. None of them are independent anymore. They all got picked up because the hardware vendors themselves want to control that managed OpenStack route to market for the enterprise space because they still think that the enterprise is struggling to get OpenStack adopted and implemented. And that way, now they can kind of control it from a hardware standpoint. And I would not be surprised to see kind of a hyper-converged model start to enter into that space, just depending on the customer type, right? So if Cisco was to come out with an all-in-one, OpenStack box and sell that and use for managed OpenStack on-premises with MetaCloud, that would be something I could see as a possibility. And then obviously the distros themselves, Mirantis and Red Hat, they're going to, if you go to their web pages, if you look at every storage vendor and every compute vendor out there, they all have some kind of reference architecture. They tie all this converged infrastructure around. And that's really what they're focused on. And obviously people that are doing it themselves, they have the greatest flexibility. So in a hyperconverged space in OpenStack, I personally think that there is a place for it, but I think it's going to be kind of challenging as a market topic to actually move it forward. So, it's simple, right? I have everything in one box. It removes all your infrastructure challenges. All you really need to do is provide top of rack networking. Because I got my compute, I got my networking, I got all that crap covered, right? Scalability, I can scale all of my stuff all at once, right? So if I need that building block or that Lego approach makes it very modular, very simple and easy to scale solutions up there. But obviously there are caveats about it. And there's many options. I mean, there's so many companies out there working in this space right now. There's probably, like I said, about 30 or so hyperconverged vendors. A lot of them now are a pure software play, and they are starting to make inroads into the OpenStack environment. You go downstairs, you'll see a couple of them there. They're like Stratoscale and some others. They're trying to capture some of this market because they think that there's potential there. And obviously, supportability, you got one throat to choke if everything's in one box. Challenges, though. Like I said, sophisticated environments, the minute you hit bare metal, it's just not going to work. Hyperconvergence tends to fall down on that particular aspect. Hyperconverged fits a specific use case, and it's really kind of a better fit in an OpenStack environment. And my thought, as a test dev or a dipping of the toe, right? I want to get something simple. I want one box that has 4 compute nodes in it and all the storage that I need, and I can turn that on and get, I'll put some kind of streamline like the Evo Rail stuff. I'll put some kind of streamline OpenStack deployment model on top of that. I could see that actually starting to make some penetration in the market. Scales well in theory, but how many of you scale your storage and compute all at the same time? That tends to not be the case, right? So you have that inability to do disparate storage or disparate component level expansion, but some of them are starting to address that with pushing the storage out or whatnot. And then obviously the distros, you'll start to see some of them start to make an approach to the Red Hat, the Mirantis of the world, to try to integrate their distro and support them. And we'll see how that part shakes out as well. And obviously, supportability on both of it. A lot of hyperconverged players do not have deep OpenStack chops. They are predominantly VMware-based technologies, and KVM to them is difficult. You're starting to see changes in that, obviously, from like the Newt Annex, who came out with their own KVM Acropolis hypervisor. SimpliVity is doing the same thing as well. So choose wisely, right? I think that's my time, and I've probably rattled on a little bit long. Thanks.